Hello and welcome to Back at Camp, Mojave County's only outdoor television show. I'm your host, Captain Don Martin, and on today's show we're going to talk about a favorite subject of mine, fishing in Mojave County. We got a great show for you. We got a great guest that's going to give you some insights on how to be more successful in your angling endeavors. So don't go away. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Welcome back to Back at Camp. I'm your host, Captain Don Martin. On today's show, we're going to talk about fishing, and I brought in a long-time Mojave County angler. I'd like to introduce you folks to Mark Daley. Mark, welcome to the show.
Hi, Don. Thanks.
Mark, how long have you been fishing?
Probably since the year one, for probably 65, 70 years.
Okay. And how long you lived in Mojave County?
30 years.
30 years. And what brought you out here?
I walked in the door of my house in Chicago. The wind chill was 42 degrees below zero, and I looked at the little woman and said, "Sweetie, pack your bags." My grandmother lived here originally, and then my mother moved here. My aunt, my brother was one of the first teachers at Wallapai, and I decided this was the place because I'd been out here in the winter.
So when you moved out here, you came out here, you started fishing in Mojave County in and around these lakes and along the Colorado River?
Yeah, I got to know a few of the guys that were around that were like my age through the Elks and, you know, like the VFW and the Legion and stuff. And they gave me some pointers and told me where to go and what to do. And I kind of wheeled my way around and, you know, for different information from the Game and Fish and stuff, you could ask those people and they would tell you a lot of different things and, you know, just put it all together over a long time.
So now, I assume you have a boat.
I have two of them now.
Two of them now. Well, Mojave County used to have the highest boat ownership per capita of any county in the state of Arizona. And it's understandable. I mean, look, we've got Lake Mead, we got Lake Mojave, we got Lake Havasu, we got Alamo Lake. We got 1,000 miles of shoreline in Mojave County along the Colorado River. So there's lots and lots of places for anglers to get out there and try to catch fish. Where did you first start fishing when you got here?
Well, my aunt and uncle had gone up to Willow Beach, even trout fishing then, you know. And so we started out there, and then they put stripers in there and everything. We found out about them and how to catch them. And, you know,
well, once they put the stripers in, that was the end of what they call the trophy trout fishing. I mean, they used to have a restaurant up there that you had to have a 5-pound fish to get your picture taken. The wall was completely plastered with pictures of 5-pound plus rainbow trout. Then, I think it was in the 80s when the Lake Mead overflowed, the stripers got into the river system, and from then on, it became a super striper fishery more than a super trout fishery because the stripers found out that those trout taste pretty good. So you were fishing up at Willow Beach when they had the great big trout, and then the stripers came in. Did you fish for both of them, the stripers and the trout?
Yeah, what actually used to happen was we'd go trout fishing when they'd first stock them, and you know, or they'd be in the river.
Right.
And then all of a sudden the trout would quit, and we'd hurry up and jump in the boats, and go back out into the bay, and then come back in towards the shore, and you could actually see the stripers swimming in the water. Later on, we had a boat with a fish finder in it, and you could actually follow them. Herding the trout up, and so we'd start fishing for stripers, and we'd catch some pretty big stripers.
What's the biggest striper you ever caught?
40 pounds.
And did you catch that at Willow Beach?
Yeah, well, just a little ways down from Willow Beach.
Yeah, I know. A lot of times when that striper fishery first started going, they were catching huge stripers, and of course, one of the sore spots was that the Fish and Wildlife Service was raising all those trout at the hatchery there. They were releasing them into the river, and of course the stripers were it was just like filet mignon to them, and they were just waiting for those trout to come by. And when they did, boy, they gobbled them up. I know I read a story one time where a guy caught a giant striper in there, and he was full, and they opened him up, and he had 14 rainbow trout from 10 to 12 inches. And, you know, the fisheries guy tell me that it takes about $1 an inch to raise those trout at the hatchery and get them out in the water. So if that particular striper had 14 trout in there that averaged 10 inches, you know, that's a lot of money that was going to make big stripers. And that's been kind of even an ongoing dispute between, you know, agencies is, well, what are we doing? We're raising trout for anglers, or we're raising trout to feed big stripers. So Willow Beach has always been, or since the stripers got there, has went from a trophy trout fishery. Now it's a kind of a trophy striper fishery. Yeah, and you fish up there a lot up there, don't you?
That's true, until they stopped stocking up there. But there was a lot of people that used to come there. There'd be 70, 80 people along the shore, and the limit was 10 trout. That's why they would come there right away when they stocked it, because then they'd catch the trout before the stripers had a chance to get them. But even though the stripers were hitting a lot of them, and they were, there's still, like if you went the day after they stocked and stuff like that, you'd still catch a lot of trout. You'd still limit out. So there was a lot of them in there. They put like 3,500 of them in there at a time. And then, you know, but there would be a lot of them still in there.
Right.
You know,
stripers didn't get them all.
No, they won't get them all.
But
they'll get some.
They'll get their share. I mean,
Yeah.
You know, it's funny you talk about that. I've actually been there when they were dumping the trout. I had an editor down at the Kingman Daily Miner that said, hey, I wanted you to do a trout story. So I went up there on a Friday morning at 8 o'clock or something like that. And the hatchery truck pulled in, and like you say, there was 50, 60 guys lined up, and they were all just standing there. And they opened up the back of that hatchery truck. Those trout took off, started going, and guys started throwing in lures and bait and everything, and they started catching them right away. Then all of a sudden, you look out there and you start seeing some splashes, and those big stripers were moving in. They were getting their share, and then exactly what you were saying. All of a sudden, the trout fishing would stop, and you'd look around, and there weren't any trout to be seen. They were hiding in the rocks as they had figured it out. And then some of the guys came down with some bigger stuff and started looking for those stripers. If a person was going up there to fish for those stocker trout, what would they use? You got a rod here to show us what a fella could use if you wanted to fish at Willow Beach, try to catch some of those trout. There's still trout in there.
Oh yeah, there's lots of them.
You know.
Now, you can see the lure here is what they call jakes. It's just a little metal lure that's gold with red dots on it and stuff. This is one of the best trout lures I have in all of the stuff that I have. You catch more trout on these than anything.
The gold with the kind of a red dots on them?
Yeah, they have different colored ones and stuff, but by and large, the best one I have is this one. And this is called a Jake's Junior. There's also a little bit bigger one that they have too.
And how did you fish that?
You just cast it out there and reel it in.
So you just
sometimes you can reel it real fast, and they'll hit it, and like if the water's warmer, or sometimes you just have to just roll it slow. Believe me, they hit them.
They like that, huh?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so now you've been catching some trout. The trout now quit. Now you want to go striper fishing there. What are you going to use? Little different setup here, huh?
This is what my wife calls my heavy artillery rod. Has braided line.
Okay.
65 pound.
What were you using on that trout rod? What?
4 pound test line.
4 pound test. Okay.
You can go to 6, maybe if you realize that you can reel faster and they're hitting it. Then maybe you can go use 6 pound test line. But by and large, I use 4 pound all the time.
Okay.
This rod here has 65 pound test line, and it's heavy action, so it's hard to bend. The lure, this one in particular, is a Zara spook that's clear. The fish can't see this. But if the sun starts coming up, the sun hits it and refracts light off of it. But like when we were talking about, when the stripers come in to get the trout, you throw this and jerk it across the top of the water. They think it's a trout trying to get away. They can't see the lure, so they hit it whether they can see it or not.
They're just hitting
They see the splash.
They see the spot, yep.
And as you can see, it's got some pretty serious treble hooks on it.
Yeah, three sets of trebles.
It works extremely well. They have other colors of these, and sometimes you can use another color. Sometimes they have some that look like trout, and they're painted like trout. That works. They have rubber lures. I forget the name of the company, but they have swim baits that are rubber. You can buy them like Walmart.
Sure.
They work very well. They swim under the water. This is on the top.
Yep. Now, speaking of famous anglers up there, there was a fellow up there by the name of Alan Cole.
Yep.
And he developed a lure called the AC lure, which basically looked like a
trout.
10-inch trout, 10-inch trout. And I understand you got to fish with him a couple times.
Yeah, Alan, I fished with him quite often. And he showed me how to use his lures. The one in particular I used was a 9-inch original that looked exactly like a trout when you were swimming it through the water.
Right.
It looked just like one. And the stripers thought the same thing.
So
I got one that looks like it was drugged behind a car. It's got all mangled up and from the stripers hitting it and everything else.
Right. So there's plenty of good opportunity up there to catch big stripers. There's still trout there.
Oh, yeah.
What about further down the river when you get into Lake Mojave, Lake and Havasu down there?
Bass.
What kind of bass?
Largemouth, smallmouth.
Okay.
There's, if you leave out of Catherine's Landing and go north, there's the power lines go across.
Right, right.
The first cove on the Nevada side, south of the power lines, is just always full of largemouth and smallmouth.
Wow.
And you can do pretty well if you get early in the morning when it's first just getting light.
Right.
You can catch bass in there.
What do you use for those?
This, I don't know how good you can see this lure, but it's called a brush hog.
Uh-huh.
It's just a little rubber lure and a hook. It has a sliding sinker. This is called a slip sinker rig, where the sinker will slide back and forth on your line. Mm-hmm. On the end of here is a glass bead. The glass bead, what I do is you can go to like a garage sale or a swap meet or anything, and my wife's given me a few old necklaces that they no longer use. Mm-hmm. And you take them apart and take the beads. Mm-hmm. The reason they have the bead on here is because where you tie the hook on, there's a knot. The bead slides over the top of the knot. That way the slip sinker, this part, doesn't break the knot.
Mm-hmm. Protects the knot. But it also, especially if you use glass, when that lead sinker hits that glass, it makes a clicking noise, and that's supposed to imitate
a fish can hear that.
They can hear it. It's supposed to imitate like a crawdad or something.
Yeah. They can hear that, and it attracts them. They'll say, "What's that noise?"
Well, now I noticed on that rod, that looks like a pretty light rod to be throwing a big lure on.
Well, this is 8-pound test line.
Okay.
This is designed for throwing into the weeds itself. So you throw this right into the weeds, the tulies, and it'll fall down because this sinker is heavy. It falls all the way down to the bottom, and then you just inch it out.
Okay.
And you can just feel it go tick, sometimes just a little tick, or sometimes they just haul off and inhale it.
Okay.
But,
hey, we're going to take a quick break for a commercial. When we come back, we're going to talk to Mark some more about fishing in Mojave County, places that you can get information on areas to go and that kind of stuff. So don't go away. Quick break. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
And you put a little trailer on here that will look like a crawdad.
Welcome back to Back at Camp. I'm your host, Captain Don Martin. On today's show, we're talking about fishing in Mojave County. I've got a longtime angler that's lived here for many years and does a lot of fishing, Mark Daley. We're discussing different places to fish. We've talked about Willow Beach. We're talking a little bit about Lake Mojave. We're going to talk about some other places that folks may want to go bass fishing, Mark. What if a guy was going to go down there to Lake Mojave? You showed us a plastic lure. Any other techniques that a person could use down there and catch some fish? I mean, it's springtime. It's getting close to spring. Spinnerbait's any good down this country?
Yeah, you can always use a spinnerbait like this.
Okay.
That's white and has, sometimes you have to put green in there if the water's a little muddy or something. Mm-hmm. Lots of different bass will hit them, stripers will hit them, and you know, all kinds of stuff.
What kind of line do you use when you're throwing a spinnerbait?
This is braid again, and then there's a little swivel. I don't know if you can see that or not, but tied to the swivel is fluorocarbon, so you can't see it. The reason you use fluorocarbon for not only spinnerbaits, but like crankbaits and other lures, is so that the fish don't get line shy, and they can't see they can see the line, and they'll curve away from it.
Sure.
You know, so you use fluorocarbon to keep them from doing
It's
that.
pretty invisible in the water.
Some of these spinnerbaits, you can slow roll it over the top of a rock or something. If they can see the line, they'll just swim away. They won't go there.
Now, you know, people talk about using spinnerbaits. What is that spinnerbait supposed to imitate out there? School of bait fish?
Yeah, like a little school of shad.
Okay.
Shad are little white and silver
Right.
little fish. And the blades on the top that spin around,
Uh-huh.
well, when they go through the water, that imitates like a bunch of fish, like a little school of fish.
Okay.
And bass and stripers and things are attracted to that. That's what makes these so
And they can feel the
successful.
vibration of those
Yeah,
thump, thump, thump. Yeah.
Yeah, it goes through the water like that and it thumps and they can feel it and it attracts them and then they see it and they say, oh, you know.
Yeah,
so they go running over.
and that's a reaction bait. They have to,
Yeah.
I mean, they see it, they sense it, they can feel the vibration, and they just run in there and charge it and hit it thinking it's a school of bait fish.
Right.
And now tell me again about that fluorocarbon. How much do you use away from the lure?
Generally 1.5 feet, maybe 2 is
Okay.
plenty. You know, the reason you don't want to use a lot of this is it's expensive.
Ah,
So, you know, you use the braided line because it'll cut through the weeds, and then you use the fluorocarbon so the fish don't see it. And you
Okay.
use a little bit of it so that, you know, it's expensive, so
Okay.
you don't have to use it all.
now, so we've talked about some plastic baits. Went through a little bit on the spinner baits. Now I noticed you got some lures over there called. Those are generally called what? Jerk baits.
Yeah.
And what are we doing with a jerk bait? What are we trying to do there? That looks pretty much like the minnow you're talking about, like it's a like a thread fin shad that we find in our legs.
Yeah. These will suspend. Like this one has a small bill, so it'll only travel a couple of feet under the water if you reel it. If you jerk it and then stop, it'll suspend in a couple, 2-3 feet of water,
Okay.
and the fish will have a better chance to take a look at it. And they'll say, well, that looks like something to eat, and they'll go up and hit it.
They'll go up and eat it because it does look. I mean, it looks just like a large thread fin shad, and like I say, that's the primary bait fish, especially in Mojave and Havasu. And now I noticed that you're throwing this on a spinning outfit, not a bait casting outfit, and you don't have any leader on it like you did on the other one. What's the difference?
This is regular. This is 14-pound monofilament, and you don't need a weight. You don't want a weight on there because you want it to act its own way, the way
Right,
it's supposed to.
natural.
So you don't want to put any weight on it or anything. And braid doesn't work very well on spinner baits. I don't know why, but it just doesn't. It works better on a casting. So we always use monofilament,
Okay.
you know, and it seems to work better. You know.
Okay. Now the size, I've seen some of these lures that are literally 2 inches, and this one looks like it's about 4 or 5 inches long.
Yeah, about 4.
Why would you use a larger bait versus a smaller bait?
Sometimes in the cold water, the fish they're kind of lethargic. They don't feel like moving around.
Right.
So they won't go chase something unless they figure it's a good meal.
Okay.
That's why you use a larger bait. And they can see it better.
Okay.
Sometimes smaller fish, like crappie, for example, you use some of these that looks just a couple inches long,
right.
and they think, well, that's something I could eat, and they go try it.
But that big lure right there, that'd be good for stripers or largemouth, smallmouth.
Oh yeah, smallmouth, largemouth.
So,
I've had bass hit these that are as long as this.
ooh, that'll get you.
Yeah, they will too.
Yeah, I know that you hear guys talk about that you follow the size of the bait. So in the springtime when they're getting started, they're small, and as the summer goes on, they start getting bigger and bigger. By the end of the summer, you got shad that big. So so you just need to kind of understand what the main size of the bait is in the water that you're fishing based on the time of the year,
Right.
and try to match the hatch, as they say.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Let's talk now. Let's talk about another plastic bait that you got tied over there. It's supposed to look kind of like a crawdad-looking thing there. And tell me a little bit about that lure, because I see a lot of guys fish that lure when I'm fishing with them.
These are called jigs, and you put a little trailer on here that will look like a crawdad, and you can see that it's lighter green. This sometimes helps. It has what they call a football head. So when it's on the bottom, you know, in the weeds, it just kind of wiggles around like that. And this part will stick up in the air. You have the lighter green tips. The lighter green tips are waving at the fish saying, "Hey, Mr. Largemouth, looky here."
And that's what a crawdad will do on the bottom. It's a defensive position.
That's right.
And it's floating up, and it's got its claws up there, and it's saying, you don't want none of this, and it's snapping. So that lure right there is trying to imitate a crawdad.
Crawdad.
Okay.
That's right.
Good deal. All right, let's talk in the time we have remaining. Let's talk about how people can learn where to go, how to fish. The Arizona Game and Fish Department has a lot of information out there. Tell the audience what they can find if they go online.
Well, the more information you have, the better. This book here is put out by the Arizona Game and Fish Department. I think they cost $8, but there's probably $800 worth of information in it.
Yeah.
If you decide, for example, it's hot out and you want to go cooler, so you go up by Williams, maybe Dogtown.
Right.
But you've never been there. You look at this book, it tells you all about the fish that are available. It tells you all about things like they have a store, they have a boat ramp, anything you'd need to help you.
Yeah, and you can buy that book at Arizona Game and Fish Department.
Yeah.
Out of here at Region 3 on Stockton Hill Road. And
that's the place.
And you can get you a book like that. If you're computer savvy, you can go online. I know the department's got hunting and fishing information in different sites. You just click onto the Arizona Game and Fish website. It's
azgfd.com.
.gov.
No, it's com.
Is it com?
Yeah,
Okay.
once you azgfd.com. That's the one for all the people. Once you get on that site, there's a picture. Underneath the picture, it says fishing report. You click on the fishing report, and then it'll come up. It gives you the fishing report, up-to-date reports for every lake and river in the state of Arizona.
Wow.
You just scroll down until you find the one you want, and you look at it and you say, well, I want to go to Dogtown. Okay. And you just look at it, and it will tell you that the trout are biting in the narrows up in the north end. Crappie are biting down by the dam and stuff, and they're biting on, whatever lure they're biting on. The whole thing, the more information you have, the better chance you have of catching a lot of fish.
So if you just moved to Kingman and you're wanting to fish Lake Mojave, you can go to the website, click on Lake Mojave, and get information. Or you can buy, you got maps here. I see that it said Lake Mojave on them. And this map right here, you can buy. This is going to show exactly what the structure is, how that lake is laid out. And so if you read in the fishing report, bass fishing good around Princess Cove, you can find Princess Cove on this map and know exactly where you need to go.
Exactly. And these maps were developed by people like Gary Garland, George Oberdink, that lived here in the years past, and places like that. So on the maps, it'll even show you when you open the map that it'll say bass and striper here and stuff like all over the maps. So all you have to do is just follow it. And like you said, you see it there at Princess Cove or some other cove, go there and catch fish.
Right. So, and one thing we kind of talked a little bit about, Mark, is do you need a boat to fish in Mojave County?
No.
No. There's plenty of places. All the lakes have fishing docks that you can go to, that you can fish off of. So there's plenty of places for people that don't have boats to go fish. Lake Havasu, Site 6, great place to go fish, catch stripers, catch largemouth.
Yep.
I've seen some guys catch some big catfish down there too. So there's plenty of places in Mojave County for people to go fish from the bank. You don't need a boat. A boat is helpful. I think it'll increase your chances because you can move around, and maybe the fish here aren't biting, but the fish over there are. So it's a good opportunity, and everybody should get out there and give it a try.
The one thing they have is the handicap accessible fish docks. Hope I pronounced that right.
Yeah.
They put these docks in places where they knew fish congregated. They didn't just willy-nilly put them anywhere.
Yeah.
So you go to the Game and Fish Department and you find out where the docks are in an area where you think you might want to go fishing. They all have them. Kaibab has them, and Catherine's Landing, and Havasu has them. They're all over the place.
Sure.
All you have to do is go to the Fish and Game and ask them where they're at, and they'll tell you.
Okay. Folks, that's all we have time for today. I want to thank Mark Daley. Mark, thank you so much, sir.
You're welcome.
For being here today and sharing some information with you. And I want to advise you, the public, hey, keep your fishing lines fresh, your firearms oiled, and we'll see you next week back at camp.